Pocket Hours is brought to you by Scout Real Estate. At Scout, we're doing things differently with our focus on legendary service and creating a community of producing agents to spur each other on to do higher quality work while keeping the clients at the center. Come see how it feels to work with a small group of committed brokers with the shared goal of upping their game. For more info, please contact Jennifer Nelson, founder and owner of Scout, 206-227-7966, or jennifer@scoutrealestate.com.
Luke Bartlett is in the house. Luke, thank you so much for being on Pocket Hours. I'm so grateful to have this chance to talk to you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
It feels like forever since I've even been able to put eyes on you, but I guess we ran into each other a little while ago at Insignia.
Yep, I know.
And I was so happy to see you, especially since the pandemic, right? Usually
Likewise.
We get to run into each other more often. So what are you doing for the summer? Any fun things?
My boss is getting married in Scotland, and I'm super excited to go to their wedding. So that will be beginning of August. And then my mother turned 70 a couple weeks ago. So I'm taking her to France for a month, basically 3 weeks.
Wow.
Towards the end of August into September. So yeah.
You're taking the month of August off. Good job.
I'm taking, you know what? It's been a crazy last few years, as you know, and I just need a break.
Good for you.
A little break ski, and then I'll come back. But of course, having people help me in the meantime.
No kidding. Yeah. And August is such a good month to kind of be gone, I think, because it's weird in real estate. So
yeah.
Well, cool. Well, let's launch right in. So tell me a little bit about what you were doing before you were a realtor.
So, I got my degree in interior design. I'd always wanted to do something in real estate. My dad was a contractor and was a super for a large contracting firm for many years. And he had, built Sotheby's international offices all over the United States. They had a contract with them. And so I was kind of introduced at a pretty young age and, going into all of his projects and kind of seeing blueprints. And so that kind of got me into the interior design world, but I always had interest in real estate. And then when I got my degree, I was in the mix of it, and doing residential, which everyone told me not to do. You should go into architectural firm and do CAD, and I didn't want to do it. So I kind of did the residential side, and then realized why everyone had told me not to do that. So when I was living in Tahoe, I started a staging business and was working with a high-end producer there, and she was like, I think you're on the wrong side. You should really do real estate. And so she had kind of pitched to me to start working for her, and Tahoe was not a place I wanted to live full-time. It was kind of a place for me to get away from. I had been living in LA prior, so I kind of took some time off. And then when I came back to Seattle, I was in Europe for a couple years traveling around. When I came back, I decided to get my real estate license. And so I was in banking for a bit, and I kind of did lending stuff for like a year while I was getting my license. And then I fast tracked it because I started dating someone who was a site sales agent working in high-rise development. And so that kind of randomly fell into place. And he was a huge guide for me to get into real estate, fast track getting my license, because you know how we all put it off. Mm-hmm. And then it just kind of snowballed very quickly in a good way.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you've had, and I know your number here, I can look it up on my sheet, but you've had some incredible success early on in your career. I mean, there's lots of people that get their license, and we know, statistically speaking, that over 50% of them don't even renew after their 2-year term. You are obviously the outlier among many that decided to kind of go for it big, and has. Like you got even in your first and second and third years of being in the business, you have record numbers. So congrats, first of all, on that.
Thank
you.
It
obviously was good advice from your friend that steered you in this direction and said, you're on the wrong side, because this is the right side. Sure appears to be the right side now.
Yeah.
Good for you.
For
Good
sure.
for you. Is there any advice you would give yourself now? If you could go back and talk to Luke when he first started real estate, is there any advice you would tell newbies that are listening to this call?
Yeah, I'll probably give the advice that was given to me.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wanted to do half my other job, half real estate.
Yep.
And I was told a hard no if you want to be successful in this business. people need to see that that's all you're doing. And so I didn't make that mistake. I took the advice,
Hmm.
and I think it was a very important one. It's like you said, a lot of people get in and think it's easy. I can just do this. I know a lot of people, blah, blah, blah. But you really need to dive in deep.
Hmm.
And I had taken all of, the advice given to me. I went and I did the ninja classes, which, you were really into and a huge proponent of. And I think that really shifted my perspective on real estate systems. I had been told by, my mentor, who I happened to be dating, start marketing yourself. I had purchased a place in a condo building that had 700 units. And so I really just followed the advice from my superiors that were successful and went, I mean, it's still a hustle. It's still a huge hustle, but I hustled a lot. It was day and night. When I would get home, I would be grilled on all the things. And so, I think you just have to really dive deep and not do it half-assed, pardon.
No, no
But
problem.
yeah, it's a full-time business, and people that you work with want to see that. And so I think those were the biggest things, find systems and do them religiously, because if you don't, you fall out. And I still fall out of doing the systems, but you get busy and that happens, and then the market shifts and you get back into them. So
That's true.
I think,
That's really
yeah,
true. I hear a little bit in your response, and I know this about you because I've known you since you started real estate, is that there's some humility in you just saying, okay, I have a lot to learn, and I'm going to look to the people who are doing it well and really kind of suck up every piece of information I can from them. And I
yeah,
do think there's a ton of agents that get into this business who sort of feel like lone rangers, and they're like, I got it. I know how to do this. And they're not doing it because they're not paying attention to other people who are doing it better. So I noticed that about you from the beginning, and you still have that. I mean, you know a lot, you're highly successful, but you still ask a lot of really good questions of people that are doing it better than you. So
yeah.
congrats.
I thank you. I think showing up to the meetings, collaborating with your teammates,
Yeah.
and honestly, I think my first few years, it was like kind of easy, and I was like, ah, this is great. I'm fine. And as I've progressed, I mean, you get into a higher price point, you get into working with people who are at a different level. Um, it's a lot. There's never one transaction that's the same. I'm constantly calling for help. I think probably twice a day I call for help with things because there's a million things that can go on. And so, yeah, I think humility is huge. I, a little over 7 years in now, feel like I'm just scratching the surface
Hmm.
of what
Hmm.
it is. We have shifting markets, so on and so forth. So it's never always education.
Hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
So you've been in 7 years. That's crazy. It seemed like, I don't know, that feels long to me, but that's great. Can you think of something that has happened in your 7 years that's a little strange or weird or funny or different? Because in our line of work, we often encounter some very unusual things. Anything pop into your head?
Yeah, I think, I said earlier, I kind of focus on condo sales. I live in a building and I farm it. And it's a newer building, so we've kind of gone through highs and lows of, you have to do your due diligence before the statute of limitations and inspect the building. And so a lot of things come up. And so things were flowing, 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 and then all of a sudden banks stopped loaning on the building, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's even before the pandemic, there was a huge shift in the condo market and really took me by surprise. And it kind of happened overnight. And I think that stuck with me and was like, okay, like it's not always going to be easy. We've had a pretty good market the last several years since I've started, basically, but kind of got kicked in the stomach, still dealing with it. And I think just taking a step back and being like, can get through this. It's not great. It's a lot more work. But you can get through it, and you just have to work together, like work with other agents and help each other out. I think that's my answer to that. It's like,
Yeah.
I thought when we got into the pandemic, I'm like, all right, I'm going to have a year off. And it was not that, right? Lots of
Yeah.
people moving in and out. And yeah, it's been interesting for sure.
Yeah, shifting market. I mean, especially I know that whenever I had a listing recently in the building you live in, and your expertise around that is awesome and helpful. And I will say that as you go through these things, which you're doing right now, then on the other side of this, you're gonna be just rocking because you have seen through a market in the condo world that now has shifted, and you can talk more intelligently and have sort of a better foundation, right, to
Hmm.
glean from. And you know a lot about condos downtown. And so from that experience, you get to help people that are saying, well, should I buy right now in this building? Or what's going on here? And you can speak intelligently about that to say, don't get worried by this. In 3 years, you'll be kicking yourself if you didn't buy in this building, right? So
Yeah,
that's good. That's really good.
exactly.
What if you were to say for the listeners that are sort of plateauing. So maybe they've been in the business 3 years, maybe they've been in 10, who knows? But they're like, okay, I've reached this level of success, but I seem to be stuck at this
Hmm.
level of success. What do you think sort of turned the corner for you to be experiencing the kind of levels you're at now?
I do business planning every year. It's a one pager. Honestly, I go through all my expenses, what I've made in the past, and every year I've set an outrageous goal. When I first did it, I was like, this is a little silly, but I'm going to believe that I can do it. And it's funny, I had a conversation with my dad, and I was like, this is a pretty outrageous number, but I think I can do it. And he was like, coming, with my past, if you don't set these expectations super high for yourself, you'll just reach where you're at, status quo.
Hmm.
So do that. Always, always push, to the max. So I have every single year I've set a pretty high bar for myself, and I have to say, because that number sticks in my head, I do the systems and I know exactly what I've set forth for the year. You
Hmm.
reach it. It's
Hmm.
weird. And I can't say that it's just magically happens. I make sure that it happens. But yeah, I think just doing the best that you can do, but keeping with your systems and having a plan, I think is really important because if you just go without, having that plan or writing numbers down on what I want to invest in my business, what I want to put away for myself, all these
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
family, friends, what's important, and outlining those. And that's a ninja thing. I really like their systems because it's just so easy and it's right there.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's helped me a lot.
For sure. I think it's interesting that you say one page, right? Because I think people can get caught up in like, we need to have like this 3 ring binder and there's tabs in it and this business plan that looks like it's supposed to quote unquote look. When at the end of
Hmm.
the day, it can be a napkin, right? Where
Yeah,
you write down 4 important things or 2 important things and you sort of go from it. So I love the simplicity of the one page. So that's great.
yeah. I'm a
Um,
one pager.
One pager. I know, right? Because if you're going to reference it, you got to just have one page to look at because otherwise I'm already bored. For the listeners too, Luke's talking about a system called Ninja Selling out of Fort Collins, Colorado. If you're not familiar with it, go get familiar with it. It's fantastic. The installation is also really good if you go there. For 4 days, you can get installed with how to do this system. So highly recommend that. The other thing you touched on, Luke, was that going through the plan of saying, this is how much money I think I want to make, and being a little bit intimidated by that number at first, there's so much science behind how reaching for something you want has your ego then and sort of all systems in yourself going toward making that happen. And so when you shoot low on that, then your body's and your brain and everything is like, oh, okay, here's this number. Let's go do that. So why not
Yeah,
shoot high, right? Why not shoot high?
yeah,
Because our egos work for us in this regard when it comes to these big numbers. Like we want to be right? So we're going to go for it. That's great.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so talk to us a little bit about the market right now. I mean, you sort of alluded to the condo market, and we know the
Yeah.
interest rates changed dramatically in the last 6 months. What else are you seeing, or talk about those things too in our market right now?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I don't just do condos, I'm all over the place. So, I'm well rounded around the marketplace and the different pockets in Seattle. I had a couple listings in Ballard that were very similar, standalone townhomes, similar square footage, similar look, couple blocks away from each other. I had one that was like 3 months ago, did extremely well. And then I got a call from the neighbor and I listed their place and very
Nice.
similar result. And then I got a third call
No way.
And it was a different story. I basically, the conversation I had was the market's shifting. No, I can't predict what's going to happen here, but if we list here, I can't promise you that we're going to have multiple offers like these other two. That's how quick this changes. And sure enough, nothing, didn't have any offers, sat, dropped the price. They ended up pulling it off to rent it. Different story. But it really happened overnight. It was like I'd seen these other two sell so quickly, way above asking. Even though I felt the market shifting, the condo world had already shifted and I've accepted that. And the conversations have been much different with my clients for months. For me, it's like, yes, the interest rates went up, but then, in Seattle, we have a lot of tech people who have stocks that they, are awarded or that they've gained throughout the years working for these companies, and they've significantly dipped down. And so I think it's just the shock of like, okay, my stock is worth 50% less, and what I would have taken out for my down payment, it's a different story, and
Yeah.
it's twice as expensive to get a loan. So I think that's kind of pushed a huge pause, at least from what I've felt. I think the really unique homes will typically sell pretty well regardless. But yeah, it's a much different story. The townhomes I felt have really been affected, and a lot of single families too. Has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you said sort of something about it felt like it from one day to the next. And that's exactly how it felt. And right, we are asked by our clients to sort of be up to speed on the market. And it's interesting to try to be up to speed on something that seems like overnight shifted to, gosh, if a week ago, like you said, this townhome would have sold for 900,000, and now we're selling this one 2 weeks later, and we're gonna get eight. Like
Hmm.
it's just weird. Like you're like, I'm sorry, what? Hey, what happened
Yeah.
there? But that's what's happened. An interest rate shift that's more than doubled in a short amount of time. In fact, history making in terms of that upward trend so quickly. And then, like you said, people's money dropping out from under them makes their buying power change significantly, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Pocket Hours is brought to you by Scout Real Estate. Hi, I'm Jennifer Nelson, owner at Scout Real Estate. I started this firm with the vision of doing things differently, with our focus on legendary service for our clients and creating a community of producing agents to spur each other to do higher quality work. If you are interested in learning more about how a small group of like-minded brokers have come together to have some fun while doing a lot of business, reach out to me, 206-227-7966, or email jennifer@scoutrealestate.com. I promise you this, fun is a high priority for me, but so is winning. So if you appreciate those two things, you might be interested in Scout. Looking forward to hearing from you.
So when you're coaching buyers right now, do you have any buyers right now?
I do.
Okay. Because I know you do a lot of listings, but when you have buyers right now, how are you coaching them in this market? I mean, they have an opportunity now that they haven't had in years, in my opinion. But what are you saying to
Hmm.
buyers right now?
Yeah, I'm saying, yay, we finally get to put in the contingencies that save you, that are your
Yeah.
safety guard.
Yep.
So most of the time, right? Not every time. And of course, my buyers want the homes that are, what do we call them? Cream puffs,
Yeah.
turnkey. So I think those are still a little bit competitive. It's hit and miss.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think what I'm telling them is the prices are adjusting a little bit, but depending on the product that they're looking for. Currently, I'm working with people looking at single family homes, and they're looking for unique places. I get the fun ones. So, for their product, I'm saying it could still be a little competitive, but hopefully we can now add the finance contingency and not have to release earnest funds directly to the seller and all these
Hmm.
other very crazy things that I don't like doing. No one does except the seller. Yeah, I think it's a nice kind of reprieve for the buyers in that, okay, yeah, the rates might be a little bit higher, but maybe we can ask for the seller to buy down points if the home sits for a week or two or whatever that is. So I feel good about it, even as a predominantly I'm a listing agent. I like a balanced market. I think everybody does, and so I'm like, okay, can breathe a little bit.
Yeah, and I think to the seller's point too, I mean, I'm balanced market's better for everybody. So when we're seeing, 6 months ago, these homes that are selling for 300,000 or more above list and 16 offers and blah, blah, I kind of get sick to my stomach, right? Because I'm like the backlash, or I guess the aftermath of that is not great for anyone. So the
Yeah.
seller might feel super excited, but now 10 neighbors just got a very inflated view of their home that's not
Hmm.
really accurate, right? Or won't be accurate for long. So yes, getting back to a balanced market is really helpful. You sort of have alluded to it and said a couple things about it, but when you're coaching sellers right now with the rising interest rate and weirdness going on, what are you saying? Anything new to them about like what's happening?
Right now, super important to set the expectations. And I do it multiple times because one time it's like, okay, here's what it is. They don't hear it, goes in
So
one ear
true.
and out the other. And I do it in writing. And I just say, just to confirm, if we list at this price, I think that's the hugest part, is just setting the expectations. Like, we're not in the market that we were 2 months ago, even a month ago. And, if we list at this price, you could get this, you might get a full price,
Hmm.
and maybe you could get above. You get lucky if it goes above, depending on the product, of course, but you may get less. And so just making sure that they understand where we're at. Like I said, I'm lucky that I've had these conversations for months prior with my condo people, but yeah, I think the most important thing is just making sure the seller is aware of like what it is. And I think most of my clients are like, we really like you, we really love you because you're so honest. You don't hold back. Like, you're just really upfront about what it is. And we want to know the truth. We don't want things sugar-coated. And I think that that's also super key, is that we are really um, forthcoming about what the reality is to our clients. We don't want to be Debbie Downers, but we also need to be realistic.
Totally. This was such a nice segue for me. Thank you, Luke. But you said something about truth telling and being straightforward. What do you think are a couple other things that why people pick you? They have three or four other brokers they could choose from, or 1,000 others, but they say, we want to work with Luke. Why do you think that is?
I think it's market knowledge. I study the market crazily, right? I'm always studying numbers, and I don't usually show up to appointments with all the numbers. I just know them. So I'm not necessarily like a numbers guy. I think it's just when I show up, I have the confidence because I know the area, I can speak to it, I can answer their questions, whether it's downtown and what the bulk of my business is or in the single family world. I just really study the market. And I think I'm a personable person. I think like that's part of it, just being able to, confidently speak to these people and also just knowing what you're talking about and the truth telling. Like, I'm not going there like I'm trying to buy a listing and telling them a price that it's not worth. I'm like, that agent may have said that because I always ask if I'm competing, but just knowing, yeah, asking the right questions, knowing everything before you go in so that you can intelligently speak to it. And when they say this, that, and the other, you can just say, sure, if that's the price you want, go with that other agent,
Totally.
or
Yeah.
whatever that is. And I've done that a lot. I don't want to be sitting on a listing that's overpriced because I wasn't honest about the reality of the situation, and or, the condition of their home, XYZ. You do your walkthrough. Everyone has their own way of doing listing appointments or whatever else, but I'm going to call out all the things.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not going to, it's not a mean negative thing. It's just, this is what it is. And this is my recommendation. And, put your best foot forward.
Hmm. Absolutely. I do. I think that that's something that I've always appreciated about you is that you say it like it is, but you do it in such a damn personal way, like personable way that people stomach it. Like, you're not rude and you're not like hurting feelings. You're just more like, okay, you kind of smile and you say, are we ready? Let's buckle up and go through this room and talk about what needs to change. Right. And I think people appreciate, obviously they appreciate, because look at all your business, how you go about doing that. So good job. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so tell us something. This is the vulnerable part if it already hasn't been already, but tell us something that's hard for you about this business. Something that you're just like, ugh.
I think you and I have talked a lot about this in the past. It can be lonely. You're always going to have some doubts and you're going to fluctuate. Like, you're going to be super, super busy. And then you're going to be like, whoa, where'd everyone go?
Yep.
And because we're commission, You have to really set yourself up for, well, A, save your money.
Okay. Yeah.
If something doesn't go well, you think you've presented a listing super well or whatever, you think you've been representing your buyer super well, and then you get this feedback that's like negative, and you just take it personal, and it's not personal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually.
Yeah.
Um, but I think those are the hardest things, like the conversations lately. I can tell you, I've been super vulnerable lately because I've had multiple listings sit on the market, price drops, can't figure out, it's really hard. You're trying to figure out how to sell this home, and there's a lot of different factors, but trying not to take that personally. And a lot of times, I think my clients will see or maybe hear a little bit of my frustration, and they'll be like, it's not on you. Like, we're just trying to figure this out together. But I think those are the hardest things. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm writing notes down on like, go do this, go do that. I'm pretty type A, and I'm somewhat of a perfectionist. And so, sometimes when I get feedback from other agents on a listing, those are all really hard things. And so I'm, of course, like sprinting back to the place to do whatever it was that someone had caught. But, sometimes you just have to take a step back and be like, okay, this is a tough market or whatever it is in that moment, and pick yourself up and go back at it. And you can do it.
Yeah.
You know,
It's true. It's
just
true.
takes time.
And the lonely part's real. I mean, we have talked about that before, and being able to surround yourself with other people in the industry that you respect and being able to call on them, which I know you have and
Mhm.
do. And you and I talk, somewhat regularly about business, and that's always really nice. But being able to have that handful of people that you can go, okay, today's a hard day. Today I hate real estate. I don't
Mhm.
want to have anything to do with real estate.
Mhm.
And that's when you book a trip to Scotland and you go to a wedding and you right? I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, you got to get away from this business sometimes to realize that you actually do love it and come
Yeah.
back with a different flair, because it can really suck the life out of you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it on the head. Having people either at your office, I mean, for me, it's everywhere. It's not just at my office. I have brokers that I reach out to on a regular basis, and we just talk about it. Like, how are you feeling? And most of the time, you're feeling the same.
Yep.
And you're like, it's not just me.
Yep.
Like, you really, having those people is huge,
Yep.
really
Super important.
huge.
Totally.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you were to have a crystal ball in front of you, because I know that, we always do in real estate because our clients ask us to, talk to us about the next 12 months. What would you predict in saying what's going to happen in the market?
Ooh, you know, I'm usually the eternal optimist, but I think the last 2 or 3 years, I've kind of expected a shift in the market. And I thought when the pandemic hit, that was when it was going to happen. Of course, it was the opposite, I think, for most of us. I think it's going to be slower. I think, there's a lot of buyer fatigue. And like you mentioned, homes were going so insanely over asking. I even had concerns about appraisals and if they were honest appraisals or not honest, but just I was like, really? Like a lot of times I was surprised to see, and or people were just coming up with the difference. I think there will be a shift, not just in the housing market, and probably stay that way for a little while. I don't know how long. I hope I'm wrong, but I think the stock market, we've been due for a bit of a
Yep.
shift.
Some
And,
balancing.
the government dumping a bunch of money, which was great during the pandemic, but everybody's buying all these things and now the money is gone. And so there's just this huge shift, right? And of course, you have to pay that money back and all these other things. So I think people are just kind of taking a step back and like, let me take some time, maybe rent for a year and then see how things go. Hopefully my stock goes up, not me, but people in that world. So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it will slow down.
Yep. I do too.
I don't know for how long, hopefully not too long. But again, people are always going to be buying and selling, and it will just be a different way. It's just not going to fly off the shelf in 7 days, several hundred thousand over asking. I think we get to do our jobs again
Right.
in a different
Yeah.
way.
Yep. Got it. I think realtors are in for what real estate has been for years before this market. It's like, oh, we have to work a little harder.
Hmm.
We have to be a little bit more marketing savvy, right? We have to think about not having this be done in 30 days and we get a fat check, right? It's literally like, oh, Okay, I have to manage these people who are going through all their emotions around why their home
Hmm.
didn't sell in 7 days. And yeah, it's harder
Yeah.
work. So last question, and thank you, Luke. I appreciate all the things you've said. Are how do you personally sort of manage your life around balance or harmony, whatever word you want to use, around, okay, I could potentially work 24 hours a day if I wanted to,
Hmm.
because there's all the work to do, right? It's thinking
Yeah.
about it, it's doing it. And also, I don't want to work 24 hours a day because that's weird. So what do you do?
Yeah. I think when I first was in the business, I worked all the time. And I had been told not to, but that was the one thing I didn't listen to because I was just so hungry for it. I think I have hard boundaries now. Like after 9 p.m., it's a no, unless it's an emergency. And I take some weekends off. And just, I have help now, so I'm super fortunate to have someone that assists me. But yeah, I think you have to take a step back and take a break, and that's okay. Like, yeah, you're gonna maybe miss an opportunity, probably not, depending on how long it is. But I think the boundaries are huge, and your clients will really respect you for that. I start at this time, and this is the cutoff. I don't actually even have to say it. I just stop responding after a
Right.
certain hour, and I think people pick up on that. It's like, okay, it's 9 p.m.
It's
We're
late. Yeah.
done. And traveling makes me happy. So whatever it is that makes you happy, brings you joy, do that. I think you've known this. I've probably done it since I started. I travel a lot. It's something that really brings joy to my life. I have a lot of friends all over the place and family. And so I do that. I go traveling and I leave for a week. I guess this year 3 weeks, and that's a little scary, but I do those things because I know at the end of the day, it's going to recharge me and I'm going to come back and I'm going to be refreshed and I'm going to be in a lot better mood. It's really important. And also, life is just way too short. Like I would love to retire early. I probably won't ever, but I
Yeah.
also want to have fun. And my parents have always instilled in me, like, go have fun, live life as if it were your last, right? Every day, do it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of stuck with me. And even in the very beginning, my partner slash mentor worked so many insane hours. At the end of the day, I was like, not worth it. Like he'd been in the business for so long, and I told him take a break,
Hmm.
maybe retire. And
Hmm.
I saw him a week ago, and he actually broke down crying, and he said, "Thank you so much. It was the best advice anyone's ever given me. I know I gave you a lot of good advice, but you saved my life. I'm retired. I'm happy." And I got to be with my family, before unfortunate things happen. And so yeah, I think just taking the time to for yourself.
Yeah, for
Of course, he
sure.
was in a different place. He'd been in the industry for a really long time, so he could do that. But I think, it took someone to say, take a break
Yeah.
or be done. It's
Right. Yeah.
it's a lot.
It's a lot. And to your point, I love that you just said this, but if I put myself in a seller or buyer's shoes, right? I'm a buyer, I'm a seller, and I meet a couple different agents, and one of them is sort of raving about their last trip to Turkey. And they have success, they know what they're talking about, but they also have a life. That's a far more compelling person for me to want to list my home with than someone who looks bedraggled, works 24/7. I can always reach them, but it's kind of weird because, they're too available in a way, right? And they don't have a life. They never talk about anything but real estate. That's less interesting to me. And I don't have any relation with them because everybody that we work with, hopefully for the most part, has a life too
Yeah.
outside of what they do for work. So kind of keeping that in mind as a broker to say, if you don't have a life outside of real estate, you're less compelling to people to work with, right? It's sort of the opposite of what you think. Like, I always have to be available and ready, and all I do is real estate. And it's like, gross. It's sort of like social media. When
Hmm.
I see brokers only posting about real estate, I'm like,
Hmm.
wah, 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 like boring,
Yeah.
right? What else are you doing in your life? Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. So, Luke, anything else you can think of that we should know about you or any other final words?
Just thankful and honored to be invited to speak with you. And I've been excited. And thank you for also being an amazing mentor to me in the beginning of my career. You were super instrumental in my success. And I can't thank you
Thanks.
enough for that.
Well,
So,
thank you. That's nice to hear. Appreciate it. Well, thank you for being on the call. And listeners, for a couple of you that are, I'm not going to inundate Luke with coffee dates, but if you ever want to talk to someone about downtown market and also just starting off with a bang, this is the guy to go take to coffee and talk to him. So thank you, Luke, for being on Pocket Hours.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening in to Pocket Hours. I hope this has been interesting, fun, made you laugh, made you think, spurred you on to do and implement some new things in your business. I appreciate your time and hope this has been a good use of it, period. Now, go be the agent you would hire.